So hi guys, welcome back to Overtime Heroics MMA. I'm Martin Hamilton. I'm joined today by higher level head coach James Doolan. How you doing?
Hi mate, you alright?
Aye, all good here, all good here. We were just commenting off air on how kind of smart James's office is looking. I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but he's got some cool swords above it, and then you can see all the UFC memorabilia up there.
So a wee boys' cave in here. This is where I hide for the missus and the kids.
Is that where you sleep when you fall out?
I've got a bed here, like.
Sometimes you're that busy, you need it.
Aye, we've actually got dorms in the gym, so we are fighters kind of visit quite a lot for across Europe and stuff. So there's always a spare couple beds here if I need it, which has been a bit of a blessing sometimes.
So, to kick off, what's been the biggest impacts of being a gym owner during the coronavirus pandemic?
So business-wise, obviously it's been a bit of a struggle. Just financially and stuff like that, you can't trade, you can't run the gym as a business the way it's supposed to. So you're not seeing people, and you can't really expect people to pay for a product they're not receiving. So we're pretty fortunate that a lot of our members are long-term members and have still been paying their membership for the past 13 months and stuff. But we have lost maybe 50% or more of those guys, with people losing jobs and stuff like that outside of the gym, obviously. So financially, it's been a bit of a stress. We're in a pretty big building here as well, so the outgoings for this building and the upkeep for it is fairly substantial compared to our last gym, which was a good bit smaller. So that's been an obvious thing, but more importantly, it's just been the momentum we've lost for training. Like the way I teach here, I have about maybe 4 to 6 months training structures planned ahead of time. So the momentum of where our guys were in terms of their own progression has all been thrown off, and fitness and whatever else they've been up to. Our kids' classes were picking up really well just before we had to close down, and so that's all stopped, and just that has basically been the biggest thing. Just it's killed the momentum. We have this gym built on momentum. It's not one of those gyms where you turn up and you don't know who's coaching the class and you don't know what they're coaching, and stuff like that. It's really well programmed. So it's just kind of threw us for a loop. So we're starting to put contingency plans for when we go back, just kind of starting from scratch again. And I think we're pretty much going to have to go through a wee bit of a rebuild phase, because there's definitely guys who we're training 3-4 more times a week, who we're probably not going to see again. They've got into a new routine in life. They've maybe found some new hobby. A lot of guys are into buying bikes or just taking up hill walking or jumping in frozen lakes and shit like that. And you don't know how many of these guys will actually come back, because it's going to take another change of their routine to come back to what they already knew. Again, but fortunately, a lot of our guys are, regardless of age, they're probably going to be lifelong martial artists. We have the type of clientele we have here isn't the type of guy that'll come in and train for a couple of years and then jack it. Usually the guys who last a year or so are guys you're going to see for 10, 15 years or so. So we've got students here that have been with me for over 20 years. So we should get all the guys back, I'd imagine. And then again, like I said, it'll just be a case of rebuilding. So the biggest thing for me is just momentum. I just killed the momentum and the flow of what we had going here in terms of the coaching and the development of the students.
Do you think we're going to see an aftermath of that when shows start running back up, with the Scottish guys? Because Scottish MMA was starting to really pick up, and it was getting to the level as all the other guys. Are we going to see a kind of dip in that because how long guys haven't been training, but guys like yourself need to try and make up that gap again?
Yeah, 100%. And I think we were already, if you just look at it in terms of the UK, the Scottish team was already behind the rest anyway. Like the English team was always kind of led the way. The Irish team, was really strong for a while, and then it dipped for a bit, but it's had like a massive resurgence with Bellator going there, and all the Irish guys went to Bellator and such. And then the Welsh scene now has been strong for a while. It's pretty evident when you look at the number of Welsh guys on the big shows and how well the guys are doing at amateur. So we were behind the guys anyway, just in the UK terms. Never mind out with Europe and the rest of the world. So you've got a lot of guys that just lost a year. Like there's very few people can take a year out, not training with a coach or a team, and come back with being a better version of themselves when they left. There is some. There's whether they've made improvements with physicality, staying fit, getting better athletically and mindset and stuff, but technically they're going to have a bit of catching up to do with, and get sharp and stuff like that. And a lot of these other countries we've had shows here during the lockdown, like they've been few and far between, but a lot of these other countries are back to, they're having regular shows, they're having amateur competitions, IMAF competitions, there'll be crowds in again. The gyms have been open longer and stuff like that. So it's definitely going to affect the whole scene. And it'll be interesting to see kind of how guys approach try to make up for lost time, I guess.
Because has the whole coronavirus pandemic, has this changed your role as a coach? Like usually you go in and your role's to coach, like to coach technique, all that kind of stuff, get your fighters sharp. Have you had to adapt your role to be more of a kind of a confidant to these guys and kind of there to motivate them without actually having that face-to-face contact? Have you had to adapt what you do?
To be honest, I was the type of coach I've always done that anyway. I'm always I'm pretty hands-on with most guys. Like I keep in touch with them outside. We're always talking, sending messages. I always check in with them, like with all my fighters and the majority of the students as well. So I've obviously been doing that more because I'm not seeing them. Like the majority of the guys in this gym, I'm used to seeing 5 or 6 times a week. Even the social trainers, I can tell you when they'll be in, what class they'll be in, and it's without fail, and it's over a long period of time. So I know when I'm catching up with certain people. But in regards to the fighters, as much as under normal circumstances, I'm seeing them twice a day, probably 6 days a week, and then I'm also talking to them out with it, whether it's about stuff that's going on in their home life that might be affecting their training or competing, diet stuff, problems I've got at work, just everything you can think of. So part of the role of a coach is, like you said, is like a confidant. You're there for them in different kind of roles. So it's probably just emphasised that a wee bit more. Like you're checking in with guys, making sure they're all right, making sure they're still keeping their mind right, doing positive stuff, getting out and exercise, and if they're struggling with ideas, just offering some ideas and stuff like that. So it's just made it a wee bit more apparent that is a role you play. But it was always something I've done anyway. I've done that for a long time.
Because what's been the biggest impact you've seen, like due to the gyms being closed, on your fighters and those that train for leisure?
With the fighters, a lot of them are just lost. They've lost the structure and the routine that they're used to. And that's a massive part of being a fighter, is you're in a routine. You know where you need to be for your training sessions. You know how your diet has to work. You know what you're doing in these training sessions and stuff. And it's almost regimented with these guys through amateur and professional, obviously. And you just took that away from them. So it's almost like what happens when a fighter retires. That they know they don't need to be in the gym as much. They don't need to be sparring as much. So the routine's gone. With the social guys, and I guess with both, it's just the outlet. Like a lot of your guys, the good thing about our gym is anybody can come here. There's a high percentage of fighters here, but the majority of the guys here are here for martial arts as an escape to what's going on outside. So they'll work during the day. They've got stress going on with work, the everyday life stress, relationships, financial stress, whatever else. But they know they can come in here at 6 o'clock, get changed, take their shoes off, and as soon as they step on the mat, they can forget about stuff for an hour or two. and go home happier. And that's always been something we've tried to promote here. It's what martial arts done for me as a kid. And it's something I was really leery at a young age, and it's something that I need to make sure that's first and foremost, that's the role of this gym. It's not just a building with mats and punch bags. It's an escape for people to enhance their quality of life, hopefully. So the guys are suffering a wee bit more than the fighters. The fighters have lost their routine and maybe a wee bit of their identity. Like it becomes such a big part of you being a fighter. And if you don't get to fight for a year and you've not got that regimented training regime, you can slip away a wee bit. But the big thing is just the normal student, just the normal guy that comes to a Thai boxing class or a jiu-jitsu class, and they just don't have that outlet for their stress anymore, and just how that affects their mental health.
Because does that add more stress onto you? Because obviously you work with these guys every day, and you know for a lot of them that going down there and having that kind of outlet, as you said, and just releasing some stress, some anger, do you worry that they might then release that in negative ways because they don't have the same outlet?
I can see it happening. I think everybody can be watching news and stuff. You can see the general population's getting angrier and angrier. And it feels like if it goes on much longer, it's just a matter of time before something gives, whether it's protests or like you're seeing in other countries, these riots and stuff like that. But it is an issue for me because I care about my students. Do you know what I mean? Like that. Everybody who comes in here, you end up, as much as we've got a coaching staff here and there's a relationship between the student and the coach, that you become really friendly with them and you know stuff about them, like you know what they do for a living, what the family situation is like and stuff like that. So you care for them, so you obviously want the best for them. So that's obviously a factor as well. But again, you're just trying to keep in touch with them and try and keep them positive. Like, we'll be back to normal soon. It feels like we've been saying this for, I think we shut the gym thinking it'd be 3 weeks in March last year. To the point now it's like, I don't know if I should just keep saying that to them because you've no idea what's going on. But we're just trying to keep them positive and remind them that we should be back to normal at some point, or some kind of capacity towards normal, and that we'll get back to training and we'll make up for lost time. Like, it's not like we're just going to come back and just try and kid on this never happened. Like, we'll make adaptations and adjustments, and we'll slowly get back to progressing to where we were before.
Because when you were talking there, you used the word positive quite a bit. So it sounds like you do have a positive mindset. Is there any positives that you have taken for the last 12 months?
There is actually, and obviously I've been able to spend more time at home with my family. Like, I work a lot of hours normally. I'm usually at the house first thing in the morning. I'm in the gym till after lunchtime. I'll go home for a few hours, then I'm back down at the gym before dinner time until late at night. And then by the time I get home, if I'm not sitting watching tape for fights coming up, I'm emailing promoters or chasing up on diet plans or getting in touch with the guys that do strength conditioning and stuff like that. So it's a lot of hours, man. So it was nice. Like, I've spent more time with I've got a 2-year-old son. I spent a lot more time with him than I probably would have if it wasn't for COVID. I'm seeing stuff with my 2-year-old that I missed with my 14-year-old because I was working all the time when he was 2. In terms of my coaching style, I've just been able to read a lot. I've kind of looked inwards at the coaching style. I've started to have more time to read, study better coaches. We've set up a podcast, which has given me access to a lot of good coaches that I can now, even with the podcast, I can message him and ask for advice. We had Eric Nixick on our podcast last week, who just coached Francis Ngannou to the world title. So I can learn from these guys as well. And then in terms of the fighters, the elite athletes that I've been working with, we're obviously not working in our groups anymore. So normally we have a couple of groups in here, about maybe 30 fighters out with the students. And I work with them, and I try and work them in little groups. But I've been working with these guys this time. So we've had fighters on in the UFC with Danny, then with Callum Murray at Brave. We've had the guys on the trilogies at Cage Warriors a few times and stuff like that. I've been working more one-on-one with the guys, or in like an even smaller group. So it'd be me and one training partner and that guy. So those athletes are getting one-to-one time more one-to-one pretty much every day, whereas when I'm working with that big group of 30 and everybody's got a fight coming up, I'm maybe only getting one-to-one with these guys once a week, and then obviously observing in wee groups. So there has been some positives there. There's some stuff will carry over when we do go back to normal, but it's like they're not as obvious as what you think. You have to really search for the positives, but it's important that you obviously you do look at it and try and find a positive to take for it, or the whole experience has just been a whole negative load of shit. It's pretty much so. There has been some, man. I think it's important that you find some in it.
No, that's true what you're saying. I think you do need to try and take the positives, however maybe limited they are. There will be some there. And that leads me on to my next question, because I was going to say, how has it been actually like cornering and preparing fighters during COVID, like during the whole coronavirus pandemic? And is there any techniques that you've used this time that you are going to carry on when things normalise again?
To be honest, I've not enjoyed it at all. I enjoyed some of the coaching stuff in the gym, working with the guys, like I was saying, one-to-one, 5-6 days a week, or having like a wee group of 3 guys and like the guy getting ready to fight in the true training program. I really enjoyed that because it means I'm getting more input with what's happening with the athlete. I'm getting more feedback off them. So the kind of relationships that way through a wee bit. The big thing I've noticed is the atmosphere in this gym. As much as MMA and combat sports is generally an individual sport, it's a big team in this gym. It's like a real team, and there's a complete difference between. Again, we're in a big, massive space here. There's 5,000 square feet. You're in here with one fighter and one sparring guy. You feel like you're it's like when you're in the arena with no fans. It's strange, man. But when we're under normal circumstances, you're in here and there's 30 plus fighters like in, and they know that they're here to work, and there's banter between them. They're having a laugh, and do you know what I mean? It's a different dynamic, man. It's easier to motivate yourself when you're in this group of 30, and you can't hide. Everybody's pushing you and wants the best for each other. So the whole team dynamic has been the biggest thing I've missed, and I think even our fighters have missed that. They're so used to being in this group, coming in and just daft things like getting the piss ripped at them before they start training, and then if they make a mistake, they know I'll not be able to live that down. I'm going to get ripped for that for the rest of the week and stuff like that. But just the positive energy you get for that group. So it's been important for me as a coach. I need to make sure that's there, and sometimes I struggle with that because I'm quite a quiet, introverted coach. I only talk when I know that something worth saying. I try. I'm not over the top. I'm not loud and shouty all the time. So I try and work on the value that I've got something to say, and I say it, the guy knows it means something, because I'm not just fucking shouting at them all the time. So I have to come in and be like, right, let's get this done and motivate them more. So that's another role that it's obviously part of coaching, motivating people. But it's easier when you're in a group of hard-working guys who are self-motivated without me being here. So that's been the biggest thing, just that, and then obviously the lack of fights. Like it's trying to get fights for people has been a problem.
You see, like the guys that have fought on the shows, like how do you mentally prepare someone for kind of going against everything they've envisioned an MMA fight being? Because I imagine when you envision an MMA fight, it's you and another guy, and it's a packed arena. Your family's there, your friends are there, your girlfriend's there. How can you? And they've got that kind of pop for the crowd. How do you channel that to just go and like forget all that? It's just you and this other guy and your two or three coaches at the side. Like,
yeah. Well, to be fair, man, that it really depends on the fighter. Some of your guys, you need to know your fighter if you're a coach, and some of your guys will do better without a crowd, because the crowd might make them anxious or they start to worry about it. And other guys, if you put them in an arena with a bigger crowd, that'll bring the best out of them. So you really need to know what fighter you're dealing with, and then obviously you need to approach it. So what we do in the gym, and it's a lot of the better gyms do this, and more. It's basically what the elite level sports do. We try and recreate that situation. So in our gym, for example, we have a full size cage, we can turn off every light in the entire gym apart from the lights above the cage. So it's the same as in an arena where you don't, it's all dark apart from the lights on you in the cage. So we've set all that up on purpose. We've got 2 rooms upstairs where we can allocate changing rooms. We can have guys in each changing room warming up with a pad holder. We'll have a referee in the cage. We'll have somebody go up and chat the door and say, right, you're up. We'll play their entrance music as they walk down the stairs to the cage. They get into the cage, and so on and so forth. So we try and recreate the situation or the scenario as close to a fight as possible. Now, normally when we're doing that, we'll have the rest of our students in running about the cage shouting like a fight crowd would. We don't get them drunk and stuff like that, but we'll let them like shout what you want, man. Try and put them off. Talk about his mother, whatever you want, man. Just bombard them with shit. Clap when he does something good. So we've just recreated that with no crowd. It's the thing I found with it is so we've been to like Fight Island and stuff like that, and it's just super sterile. Do you know what I mean? It's became. It's not an entertainment sport when there's no crowd there. It becomes more actually just about the fight, which is kind of cool. It becomes more about this test of skill set, and there's factors there. Like I said, like some guys, the crowd doesn't bother them whatsoever. They block it right out. They're so channeled. All that matters is the space they're in, and the other guy. They're not even aware of the referee. And then other guys need to feel the crowd, but they need that energy. Like with one of our fighters, Stevie Ray's like that. When he walks out into the hydro and there's 11,000 Scottish people shouting at him, you can something switches in him. You can see it just brings the best out of him, and he likes that. Whereas he wouldn't do too well with that sterile environment. It just been the officials in the fight. So it's just trying to recreate that. Like I said, like any form of training, you're getting ready for. You've tried to recreate an event or a game or a match. So you just try and make it as close to that as possible.
It's not, without giving like kind of too much away, just in case anyone else out here is listening, do you like can see, because everything you say, because there's no crowd, it can be heard a lot clearer by like the opposition fighter. Do you kind of use code words, like see similar to what Mark Henry does? But Mark Henry's like different codes for each fighter. Do you kind of deploy that kind of tactic just to avoid the other fighter knowing what you're saying?
Yeah, it depends where we're fighting, to be honest. Because see, if we're abroad, a lot of time I can get away with stuff because they don't understand my Scottish accent. When I was back when I first fought in America with Joanne Calderwood when she was at Invicta, if you go back and watch the fights, you can hear Baz Rutten doing commentary, and he's like, "We need subtitles for this corner, man, because I'm quite loud in the corner." I kind of stole that off of Carol Tanswell, his kind of corner style, and there's a lot of guys copy that, like Chris Fields is like that, and stuff like that, and Alex Enlund, and a lot of guys kind of got that for Carol, and I kind of took that, so I'm up pretty loud. And again, it depends on the fighter, but with fighters like that, and with Stevie Ray, it's almost like I talk about it like you're playing a video game to an extent. I kind of walk them through certain bits. So when it was in America, all I had to do was speak, and they couldn't understand my accent. They thought I was Irish. And then the other fighter generally didn't know what I was saying anyway. But if it's at home or somewhere where they're going to be able to pick up on what I'm saying, again, depending on the fighter, we will. So we use certain terminology for certain moves or certain positions in the cage. And it just depends on the fighter again. Like when Callum Murray fights, he'll start standing and we'll figure stuff out in the feet. But because his nickname's, I might get in trouble for this, because his nickname's Bundy, whenever I want him to get a takedown, I'll shout, "Put him in the van." So, that's his cue to go for a takedown. Like if it's stalemate in the feet and he's not finding stuff, and I feel like that'll change the dynamic, I'll maybe shout that. And I know a lot of other coaches do that as well, but it is something that most guys are doing. And again, if you're working with guys on a daily basis, it's something it's kind of like cheat codes and stuff like that, you kind of dial into them.
Because I was thinking there as well when we were talking about the no fans, like MMA is a very unique sport, and I think for me it's the only sport in the world where I've personally not really missed the fans. Because see, when you watch football, like football without the fans is awful.
Yeah.
But I feel sometimes with MMA, like the fans can be quite off-putting. Because see if you've got like a really good grappler who's got someone in the ground and they're maybe on their back and they're like try to set up a triangle, they try to set up a submission, and the crowd starts kind of booing, and the referee ends up standing it up due to pressure of the crowd. So I don't know if you feel the same, but a lot of the fights I feel have flowed a bit better without the crowd, and it's been quite good to see.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I enjoy it without the crowd. I like hearing the corners. I actually watch quite a lot of Fight Pass stuff where you can actually get the audio for the corners. I think you used to be able to anyway. I like hearing what the coaches are saying and stuff like that. And I think MMA and even boxing as well without the crowds is quite good. The football I'm struggling with. I'm not really into football that much. I like watching matches a day on a Saturday night because I can switch off and stuff like that. But I've struggled watching it without the crowd. And other sports, I actually tried to get back into watching WWE wrestling. I used to watch that as a kid. And I put it on one night with no crowd and there's holograms of people in the crowd and shit. And I'm like, oh, it's rubbish, man. So that never lasted long. But I do agree. I think MMA is actually not benefited from it, but it is. You see it from a different perspective. I think people can maybe appreciate it a wee bit more. And I think what you said about the crowd's influencing the referees, even the fighters to an extent, is a massive thing. I can recall guys in our gym being in positions and heard the crowd starting to boo, and stalling in the position is probably the right thing to do at that time. And they thought, oh, the crowd's booing, I better do something, and it's led to mistakes. So it is an influence, definitely an influence. And I've actually enjoyed a lot of the fights, especially with the being able to hear the coaches, like I was saying.
Because I feel as well, like just as you were saying there, you do get a new appreciation for the fighters because you can actually, let's see with the crowd drowns a lot of what's happening in the cage out. But see now, see when you're like, because these guys are at the elite level, see when you hear how hard they actually hit, and let's see like when they connect to the body or they connect to the legs, I think you're getting a new appreciation for how sore it actually is.
Yeah, 100%. You don't realise that. Like if you're coaching and you're sitting cage side, you hear it, and there's sometimes you will. I remember I was at UFC Manchester when Crocop got knocked out off Gonzaga with a head kick, and I was in the cheapest seats. I was right up the back, and I remember him kicking him in the head and hearing the scudding noise for 100 meters away. Now, if you're in an arena with no fans and you hear that, it's amplified. It's massive. So it gives you an appreciation of how hard these guys are hitting each other. Even when you've got guys on the ground or clinching against the fence near the mic, you can hear them breathing. And it gives you an idea of how hard they're actually working in these positions, how uncomfortable it is, and stuff like that. And this is all shit that the crowd normally take for granted. They think, well, he's not doing anything, he's not moving. But now you can hear these guys exerting themselves, trying to move out of these positions or try to better the position and stuff like that. So it just brings another dynamic. It's like an audio dynamic that's past the visual dynamic, which is pretty easy to see. In different levels, you can generally look at a fight and see this guy's doing better than this guy or whatever. But it just gives you an idea of what you're saying, how hard these guys are taking, what they're taking, how hard they're working, and how tough it is to be in there as well.
It's just to kind of move on a wee bit and go specifically into your gym. Like, where do you see your gym in 5 to 10 years' time?
We'll just keep getting bigger. Like I said earlier, with the training plans, I've even planned 6 months ahead in terms of what we're coaching. And I'm the same way. We've got goals and stuff like that for the gym, whether it's number of students. We've got affiliation groups that they're setting up now here. So because I've been coaching almost 24 years or something, after about 10 years in, I started seeing patterns of what happens where you get generations of fighters. So I talk about being on my 4th or 5th generation of athlete now. Coaching, I break my coaching down into 2 bits. So there's performance coaching, which is dealing with athletes, and then there's participation coaching, which is the classes and the general public. So I have to be up to speed with both. But the performance coaching, we have fighters who've came and went. So the way I look at my fight team in particular is I run it like a conveyor belt. So I have my elite level guys that are signed to the biggest shows, whether it's the UFC or Brave or EFC. I've got Chris Shaw at 1FC now as well. Then I've got my guys under it at the regional shows who are maybe fighting it on top or made for the cage or the Budo shows or stuff like that. And then I've got so that's pro guys. Then I'll have my amateur team, my elite amateurs, who are the guys who've had 10 plus amateur fights. And then I've got my novice amateurs, under 5 fights. Then I've got my teenagers, 16 to 18, who are getting ready to fight, but they've not had their first fight, all the way right down to even now starting to incorporate to our under 11s. So I've got this planned out for the next while. So I know potentially I've got an idea who's going to be going where, student-wise. I've got stuff in place now for my guys who have done competing, bringing them in as part of the coaching staff or keeping them on as support networks, sparring partners, etc. So I've got like guys like Graham Turner who had 35 professional fights who'll come in the gym and he'll spar with guys like Mark Ewan who's getting ready for his first professional fight, and just stuff like that. So going back to what you were saying, I went off on a tangent. My plans and stuff is to keep developing these affiliation teams. So I've got 6 of them. I'm not taking on any more now. So it's all basically these guys are all my students who now have their own gyms and their own groups of students. So I will kind of overlook what these guys are up to, MMA wise and jiu-jitsu wise. So I can grade all the guys through jiu-jitsu, being a higher grade than them and stuff like that. But MMA wise, I'll keep in touch with them, make sure they know what they're doing. We all get those groups all get together for sparring days once a month, or used to once a month. And then I'll bounce about those gyms and teach as well. So we've got stuff in place there. Just keep building the numbers, keep running the conveyor belt of the fighters, keep pressing them where they need to get, turn the amateurs into pros, get the early pro guys onto the bigger shows, get the guys who are making a career yet to progress through contracts, whether it's at the UFC or whatever, make more money, do what they need to do and achieve their own goals. So it's never ending. It's just like I said, it's a conveyor belt. You can't settle for what you've done. You can't be happy with 8 world titles, 3 athletes in the UFC, guys at Bellator. You just want the next thing. So I have personal goals that I need to hit as a coach, and then you're dealing with all those individual goals for every single martial artist or fighter that's in the same building. So it's just about progressing and keep moving forward. Once we get started, it's just been a stumbling block. It's like the way I'm going to look at it is like somebody's hit pause, and it's just going to unpause and we'll get back to it.
Because like you touched on the affiliation there, and that's always something that's quite impressed me about your gym, because your gym, you were under the Dinky Ninjas fight team for a while, with with Grip House and the D unit. Is having those kind of affiliations, is that important in Scottish MMA? Because as an outsider kind of looking in, it can look a bit tribal at times. Whereas I think for Scottish MMA, and like Chris Duncan, like, as we mentioned earlier, he's an amazing example of this, because he likes to go around all the gyms and just extract the best bits of knowledge to improve his game. Should that be something that Scottish MMA needs to do going forward? Like, we need to kind of come together a bit more and share and pool resources?
I think so, man. To an extent, we do that anyway. Like, we've had Chris in here a lot, and it's mutually beneficial, because it means some of your younger guys are getting access to a good level pro. He's getting access to better level pros like Stevie and stuff like that. So we've had Scott Malone's here now. We get Aidan Stevens down whenever he can. So most of the better pro guys come here, and we have an open door policy for the guys, because it is mutually beneficial for us to have guys of that experience. And you steal stuff from them, like, not steal, but I see Aidan doing stuff and I'll copy it. Now when Scott's getting ready to fight next week in Cage Steel, some of the stuff he does is different from what we have done. So some of your guys will pick up for it. So it is a good thing, man. It needs to be like that. And if you look at most of the bigger teams, they're all doing the same stuff. They've got an affiliate group. The way we done it was, the Dinky Ninjas started with me and 2 other guys, Paul McVeigh in Glasgow and John Nicholson in Dumbarton. And at the time, because there wasn't a lot of MMA about, the 3 years had kind of different skill sets. And by getting together, it complemented everybody else. And that was how that team grew. It started for the 3 gyms with wee groups of students and grew into what it became. And I think out of the guys, Paul and John are now doing just nothing but jiu-jitsu. They're not involved with MMA. So I'm still the kind of only one that's running with that for that original group. And what I do is just the exact same. The philosophy is the same. It's that Bruce Lee philosophy. It's like absorb what's useful, and that's what I do. So we've developed a place now where these other Scottish guys can come. We have fighters with Luke Shanks moved up here from England to train full time. We actually had a couple athletes lined up for moving here full time, one for Ireland and one for Sweden, with very good pros that are signed with big organisations, and the COVID thing kind of killed it. So whether the guys have lost a year of their career and stuff, or whether they move somewhere else now because of restrictions, I don't know. But you need to learn from everywhere. The guys who are scared about their students going elsewhere and picking stuff up are insecure. And you can't be insecure as a coach, because it bleeds over to your fighters and stuff like that. Fortunately, at higher level, we've got a massive support network. Like the guys I mentioned, like Paul McVeigh's still there if I need anything. He specialises more in jiu-jitsu now, but we need jiu-jitsu. John's still there, specialises in jiu-jitsu, strength conditioning, and he's just got guys with a ton of knowledge and experience that you can reach out to and get stuff. And there's other coaches I have, like I said earlier with the podcast, I'm in touch with, and I can bounce ideas off them if I need anything. So you need to work together to progress it forward, man. Because the Scottish MMA scene is not big. Like there's maybe if you count the gyms that are doing stuff right, there's maybe 4 or 5. There's a lot of guys out there that have MMA gyms, but they're chucking guys into fights, they're not preparing right and stuff like that. They're kind of winging it. Maybe try to figure it out, which is fair enough. But like I said earlier, in comparison to England, Wales and Ireland, we're far behind. So it's mutually beneficial for the 4 or 5 good gyms to work together. And then there will be times when they need to compete against each other, which is fair enough. Again, that's needed as well. You need to have the best guys in the country fight each other at some point to progress forward. I always try and I like my guys to be the best guy in Scotland before they start thinking about being the best guy in the UK, and then the best guy in Europe, and then push for there towards world stuff. And that's always kind of worked before for us. So we kind of keep doing that. But I think it is important, like you said, for the Scottish guys to work together, even if they're not working together, just have enough respect for each other that you can ask something, or could I maybe send this guy here, or I've got this fighter fighting this opponent and you have a guy who fights very similar to him, how can I get some sparring rounds with him? The same way they do in professional boxing and stuff like that.
Because do you, like we were talking about this a wee bit off here, like you have the dorms there at higher level now, do you notice, because you've got that space where guys from abroad can come over, does that massively benefit your team? Because you've got guys coming for, say, Sweden, Ireland, you might have guys coming over from America, it's like sharing techniques that Scotland wouldn't get otherwise.
We've had this for a while, man. Since I opened the last higher level gym 2012, we've had people come from across Europe, and what we've had to do before is either find somewhere for these guys to stay, whether it's an Airbnb, or sometimes they'd maybe bunk in with one of the guys in the gym who's got a spare room. We'd put them up there. So we've had that for a long time, and it's something that we wanted, just to get different perspectives and different skill sets in the gym. And then when we built this place, we had spare space. I was like, all these other big gyms have got dorms. It might be something that'll appeal to people, and let's do that. And we've been fortunate. We've been in here for 2 years, and other than 2 years before the COVID, other than like a month or two, there's been professional fighters in the dorms. We've had, like I said, Luke Shanks was up. He lived in there for a few months. He done his camp for Samir Fedin staying in the dorms. We've got a Serbian 10-1 lightweight kid who's probably not too far off the UFC. I think he's ranked #1 in Germany at 77 kilos. He's been over multiple times. He comes over for camps and stuff like that. And then with like really good fighters like Connor Hitchinson was up, like a really good English pro who's going to go into big things and stuff like that. So it is important, man. And again, like I said earlier, it's mutually beneficial. My pro guys get to work with these exceptionally good fighters. They're learning for us what I'm learning for them. and it's always just exciting to have some of these guys over to test your level against them as well.
Because you kind of spoke about this a wee bit earlier, like having more time with your family. See when things were in full fruition, and you were going to, like, because you had guys fighting in Brave, you had guys in the UFC, Cage Warriors, all that kind of stuff. Did travelling all over the world, like, so frequently, did that ever get quite tiring for you?
It does, to be honest, mate. I hadn't travelled. I was talking about this with somebody recently, actually. I hadn't really been on a plane until I think I was about 22. And my family, we never had holidays and stuff when we were kids. My mum and dad couldn't afford it. We'd go to aunties and uncles who stayed in shitholes like Greenock, no offence, but we'd go to Greenock for a week at summer and stuff like that, hang about my big cousins. So initially it was pretty cool, but you're travelling all over the world with your mates, especially when I was competing. You're travelling all over the world with your pals, and you're fighting and stuff like that. But then when I started just solely coaching, and it became more business-like, you're away with your family for a week or two at a time. And there was a spell where I was in Brazil with Stevie Ray, and I was having to come home for a couple of days, and then I think I had to go to Ireland with Callum Murray. I was back. I was in Johannesburg with Danny Henry and stuff like that. And then even just being at home, when there not been as many shows in Scotland, we're driving down south. We're away to Newcastle one week. We're having to fly down to London one week, and it does get tiring, man. It adds on to everything else that you're doing in terms of your time in the gym. The other stuff that people don't see that coaches do, the watching tape, sitting at a computer emailing and stuff like that as well. It does get really tiring. I speak to John Kavanagh about that quite a lot, because he does it more than anybody I know. Like, especially his team's so big, it's exploded. He's got guys on shows you wouldn't think. And for a point, I was meeting him in hotels at shows. We'd talk and we'd train a wee bit. And I'm like, where are you going now? And he's not been home for months. And I'm like, oh, I get to go home, and I've got Monday to Friday, then I have to drive to a show in Newcastle. So again, I put a positive spin on it. I was like, I'm doing what I want to do as a job. I could be working on a building site. I could be doing some job that I hate and miserable, but I'm doing a job that I like doing, and I'm getting to travel the world seeing stuff. When again, I wasn't on a plane until about 22 years old. So it's positive, but it is. I don't like flying. I'm not scared of it. It just drains my body. I don't like being on the plane with breathing everybody else's air and everybody else's farts and stuff. I feel sick for a couple of days when I get home, but it is tiring, to be honest. But again, John can do it, and I'll just persevere with it.
So, do you think it's important then to have, like, good guys round about you, like guys that you can trust? So if things are getting a bit too much, you can kind of delegate some responsibilities, or would you, as a head coach, never want to do that?
No, I have that. I have a network in place under me where it's other coaches, and I've got 5 predominantly coaches under us, and then I've got some other guys under that as well coming through. Just what I was saying earlier with the fighters, it's a conveyor belt, and it's not like just you've been here this long, you're now a coach. It's guys that have came to me and expressed an interest in coaching, or I've seen something in them where I was like, do you know what, you'd make a really good coach. And then I figure out what type of coach they are. Will they be good at taking a group, or will they be good at working one-on-one? And then with coaches here as well, I make all my guys coach for 100 hours while I supervise it. So I'll be like, you're taking this class, this is the subject, or I'll spring it on them, you take this class and show me what you want. And I tally mark it up. So all the guys done 100 hours of supervised coaching. So it means that when I'm away with fighters, I know the gym's in good hands. The coaches are excellent. The guys I wouldn't let them coach at my gym if they weren't good. I'm fully aware that the reputation of this gym, and my reputation's built on the gym. So if somebody comes in here for their first night when I'm away in Nashville with Stevie and they have a bad experience, they go away and they're like, that gym was shit. Whereas, like, if anybody comes in here, you make sure that they get the experience they deserve. So these guys are excellent coaches. I wouldn't trust them to run the gym. I wouldn't trust them with the reputation of the gym or the team. And like you're saying, I can send these guys away to fight shows. I've sent most of the guys, like Stevie Ray's been to South Africa and cornered Danny and Callum. My main coach is a guy called Danny Gray, who's a jiu-jitsu black belt. He fought MMA and boxed. He's been with me for about 20 years. I've sent him to shows. He's actually cornered Stevie's first fight in UFC in Poland. I actually sent him to Lebanon because I didn't want to go because I was scared of getting abducted. And it was like a high spot for terrorism at the time, so I sent him there. And I sent Justin Flanagan on the wildest trip ever to Georgia to corner the Serbian boy I told you about earlier. Where I think he flew into one country and done an illegal border run through 3 during the night, and to get to corner this guy, he was away for about 3 days, and I think he'd been in a car for about two of them. So I'll send the guys on certain assignments if I feel like I'm going to get kidnapped or shot.
A wee bit of character building for them.
Aye.
So just to wrap the interview up, is there any guys, any up and comers for your gym or any other gyms in Scotland that we should be keeping an eye out for?
Right, so let me think. Listen, the entire gym here is pretty much full of killers. So everybody up here is kind of wary Mark Ewan, turning pro. I'm trying to talk about this kid less actually because I don't need pressure heaped on him. He's ranked #1 amateur in the UK for the last year or two at 70 kilos. He's due to turn pro. He's verbally agreed a contract with EFC in Africa, but they've given him permission to fight out with. So he's won. He's been like the head training partner, sparring partner for Stevie and Danny for a while. So he's definitely won. We've got a kid called Kieran Reid, who's a 7 or 8-0 pro kid, due to turn pro as well. But going right through, there's a kid called Sean Clancy who just turned 18, who's 4-0 now. He's been fighting since he was 16. He's fought adults. He's a freak. He's getting bigger and bigger. He's going to probably end up at light heavyweight. He's wanting to move into the gym and live in the gym. And then right through, I've got younger kids, Mark Lassalis, Paul Lally, all the way through. They've not even had their first fight yet, but you know they're going to be pretty special. I think on top of that, you've got Luke Shanks, who's going to get his world title back at Cage Warriors, hopefully, and progress on the UFC. So there is, like I said earlier, there's a conveyor belt of them right through. Keir Harvey, who's like a 3-1 pro featherweight. So there's a conveyor belt of them right through to waiting for their first amateur fight, to waiting for their first pro fight, to that kid Clancy I mentioned, who'll need another year at amateur. He'll turn pro at 19. Out with our gym, who have I seen that's impressive? One of the kids that I'm trying to think. The kid at the hit squad, Jordan Strong, was impressive when I seen him.
Yeah.
If he gets more active, I think he could do pretty well. Kid through in Kilmarnock that Mark Ewan beat, James Bunton. Looks like he's got all the kind of physical tools and a general idea of a game plan. He needs a couple of wee things tightened up, which will probably come through time with him. Looks like he could do well. There's one of Ross Houston's kids. I think he's one of Ross's main training partners. I can't remember this kid's name. I've not got the best memory, but there's a kid up there that stands out. It might be another Ross.
Is it Ross Urquhart?
Him.
Things with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know the name. I just can't pronounce it.
Pretty good. And then there's a kid at Stevie Ray's called David Fell, who's exceptionally good. If he can I've seen him in the gym as well. If he can get a run at it, he's got all the tools to do well. Craig Mopp's got 2 boys, Sean Conway and another kid called Jimmy Son. Both of them have got potential to do really, really well. I spoke about them before. The 2 of them are they're like natural born fighters, those 2. And you can see it when they fight. And Craig is probably the perfect guy to tailor that style in them. And he's disciplining them enough where they can still harness that but he's not changing them. So the two of them look like they're going to be exciting prospects. Other than that, Rhys McEwen for the grip.
I really like Rhys. He's really.
I've known since he was a kid. He's got a big future. It'll be interesting to see him when he starts moving up in level of competition. I think he's going to do pretty well.
Yeah,
that's about it off the top of my head.
Oh, that's a good conveyor belt of Scottish talent coming through, because it must be a bit strange for you, because like, obviously you started out in MMA when it was cage fighting, as if they called it, and then you've seen it evolve through that into this recognised art that became popular, and then it just popped with Conor McGregor, and now you've got kids at 14, 13 who are dedicating a life to mixed martial arts. That must be amazing for you as a coach to see how dedicated these young kids are.
Yeah, it's cool, man. It's scary. It's the main thing, because you're getting kids like Sean Clancy, and then in 2 years of coaching, he's doing stuff that 10 years ago or guys with 10 pro fights couldn't do. You're also getting kids coming in and telling you this is what I want to do as a living. Like they can see a way where it can be a career because of shows like the UFC and stuff like that. Whereas before, you never really had that. It was always it was a hobby or something that they'd done out with. But now you've got these kids coming in and they're like, this is what I want to do for a job. And you're having to tell them, like, be brutally honest with them, like, that this isn't the best career. Make sure you stay at school, have something to fall back on, because it doesn't go right for the vast majority of people. Even the guys that you see doing well, winning fights in the UFC, have got a job. They've got day jobs and stuff like that. But it is at a place now where you have kids coming up and saying, this is what I want to do. Like similar to they would be if I want to be a football player, I want to be a rugby player, or whatever else. So it's pretty cool.
Do you think that's why young people are picking it up so quick, is because they're learning so young, and it's like as their body is growing and like developing, they're developing like through these techniques. Because it's something Joe Rogan talks about quite regular, and he says the younger you start, the better, because as you're growing, your body's adapting to being able to throw strikes, being able to grapple, and your muscles just develop round about trying to do that. Whereas when you're older, you're a lot more stiff, your body's like grew in a certain way. Do you feel like, just as you were saying earlier about the young boy, I think it was Sean Gibb, he's doing things within 2 years that adults doing 10 pro fights couldn't do?
There's a couple thoughts on this, so I'm not getting into it too much, but there's definitely a factor there. When you're younger, you're more prone to learning. Your learning curve's faster. So, for example, the start of the lockdown there, my 14-year-old kid plays guitar. He's not into martial arts or sport. He plays guitar, but he's picked it up exceptionally quick, like to the point now where he's less than 3 years in and he can give guitar lessons. He knows how to strip down and build guitars and shit like that. During the start of lockdown, I was like, right, teach me how to play this guitar, and I couldn't get it. I know for a fact if I was younger, my brain would be less hardwired with everything else that's hardwired with. I would probably get it. But you can see it if you're running about kids. I see my 2-year-old doing stuff this week that he couldn't do last week, because they learn faster. Generally, your first 3 years on the planet, you learn quicker than anything else, and then you're learning, your rate of learning starts to slow down a wee bit. And this is something you need to be aware of as a coach as well. Like, certain kids at a certain age are going to pick stuff up faster. But the flip side of that is, especially with MMA, is I know kids who start, their parents will bring them to MMA at 11 or 12, and they won't make it to 15, especially boys in this country. They'll get to 15, 16, their mates are going down the park with booze and girls and whatever else, and it's not for them anymore. And you get the exception, like Sean Clancy, who I think when he was 10 years old, told you he wanted to be a professional fighter, and now he's a year away from it. But generally the culture in Scotland kills it. But the learning curve of these kids is faster. But the big thing is, it's the level of coaching. Like if a kid comes into this gym, they've got me here. I've got 20 odd years of experience with 60 fights. I've got people running about me who I've learned for. They're getting stuff that we never had when I started. Me and Paul and stuff were figuring stuff out. The same way, it's the same across the world. As the sport grew for its infancy, it's trial and error. You're figuring stuff out. This works, this doesn't work. And now you're at an extent where you have so much access to information with the internet and fights every week. You know what works. You can see it. There's proof. And then the same in the gym. You know what works in the gym. So they're just getting better coaching with day dot compared to what we had. So they're going to be better faster. You've got coaches who are predicting the next evolution of the game, so that you can look at the featherweight division now. If you've got a featherweight athlete and say, right, this is what's happening in the division. Top 15 guys all do this, or there's patterns that are emerging. This is what will beat that system in a year from now. So you've got things like that going on with predicting meta games and stuff. That combined with the level of coaching being better, the student or the kid having a better learning curve just means that these kids are going to be better in general. The problem in this country is getting them through that 15, 16, 17, where do they want to be in a gym when their pals are out putting stuff on social media, up the park drunk, with girls and everything else that gets in the way. And the same with girls, stuff gets in the way, going out with the rest of their friends at the weekend, and the stuff that you have to sacrifice if this is really what you want to do. So it's just trying to get a blend with all of that. So when in here we have our kid programs and stuff like that, but we generally, if guys want to be MMA fighters, I would rather they started at 16 or 17 instead of 10 or 11. And I'd rather they had outside interest for a while as well until they hit 18. So the stuff they need to get out of their system, they need to have a childhood and all that as well. Because the guys I've seen who are like prodigies at 10 and 11 don't make it to 18.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. To be fair, especially what you were saying about the culture, because I'm hearing what one of the local football teams in Dumbarton, what they do to try and combat that is on a Saturday, he makes the team go a 6K run. And this is boys at 14, 15. And his way of thinking is if he does that, then they'll not go out on a Friday. So that's his way of kind of trying to combat it. But I'm not sure how effective that is in the long run. Like, so if they want to go out, they'll just patch the fitbar.
We done the same with our Super Sunday session. So our big sparring day is 10 o'clock on a Sunday. And it was so that people wouldn't go out on the Saturday night or stay up all night watching the UFC. Like, you can tell the guys that they've stayed up to 5 o'clock in the morning to see a main event and then stroll in here at 10. And the rest of the guys have been like, I've had 8 hours sleep, I feel, and breakfast, I'm good to go. So we done the same, but it's the country we live in. Like, you wouldn't have that problem in some of the Scandinavian countries and stuff like that. It's not an issue. It's just the culture here.
But James, thanks very much for your time, and I'll let you get back to it because I know you've got a busy day of emails and coaching and all that kind of stuff. So thanks for taking the time out your day to come and talk to us. Just a last wee hint, do you have any social media or anything you want the viewers at home to hit up?
Yep, we're on Facebook and Instagram as just Higher Level Martial Arts. Twitter we're on as Higher Level Pod. Podcasts on YouTube, just Higher Level MMA Podcast. There's a bunch of good guests and stuff on there, coaches and fighters. It's actually developed into a decent show just for getting insight into stuff that you maybe not see before, like what the coaches talking about behind the scenes stuff and stuff like that. So any of them, just check it in, please.
No worries, and thanks very much at home for listening, and we'll see you again.
Thanks, mate.